Part Conween. The great hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with cold light. Tall beings from 100 worlds stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the small group of humans at the center of the chamber. Among them was Daniel Hayes. He wore the faded blue uniform of Earth's old fleet, his shoulders stiff, his face calm. Beside him stood Dr. Lena Brooks, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her dark eyes scanning the alien faces around her. She wasn't a soldier, but she had come anyway. Someone had to speak for the truth. The Council had summoned humanity for judgment. Not for war, not for rebellion, but for something worse in their eyes. Unpredictability. Humans built too fast, asked too many questions, and pushed too far beyond their borders. They had terraformed a moon in the Kasari system without permission. The Council claimed the moon held dormant microbial life, life with potential for sentience. To them, that was a crime worse than murder. Daniel had argued that the settlers on that moon never knew. The scans from Earth's Science Division had shown nothing. But the Council did not care about mistakes. They cared about order, and humanity in their view was chaos wrapped in skin. High Arbiter Vexilorn, a tall being with silver skin and eyes like polished obsidian, stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hall, smooth and final. By the will of the conquered and in the name of galactic stability, the species known as Homo sapiens is hereby banished. All human vessels, colonies, and citizens are to withdraw beyond the Veil Nebula within one solar cycle. Return will be met with force. This decree is absolute. A murmur rippled through the chamber, but no one spoke against it. Not even the species that had once traded with Earth. Not even those who had shared star charts or medical knowledge. Fear had won. Daniel did not bow. He simply turned and walked out, Lena at his side. Outside the hall, the sky of the Council's capital world, Oris Prime, was streaked with violet clouds. Ships from a dozen civilizations drifted in the distance, silent and watchful. None offered help. None even looked at the humans as they boarded their small transport, the last official vessel Earth would ever send to the heart of the galaxy. Back aboard the ship, the mood was heavy. The crew moved slowly, their faces drawn. They had known exile was possible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Daniel stood on the bridge, staring at the star map. The Veil Nebula glowed red and purple on the screen, a storm of gas, radiation, and gravitational tides. No one had ever mapped it fully. No sane species would try. The Council had not just banished them. They had sent them to die slowly, far from home. Lena entered quietly. She held a data pad with the final logs from Earth Central. They've started evacuating the outer colonies, she said. Everyone who can move is heading for the jump point near Proxima. We're to rendezvous there in 3 weeks. Daniel nodded. How many ships? About 200. Mostly freighters, a few old warships, some colony haulers. Nothing like what the Council has. It's enough, he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The journey to Proxima was long and quiet. News trickled in through encrypted channels. Earth's government had collapsed within days of the verdict. Panic spread. Some refused to leave. Others fought over seats on the last transports. But most came. Families packed what they could. Scientists saved data cores. Soldiers handed out rations and kept order. In the end, over 8 million souls chose exile over surrender. At the rendezvous point, the sight took Daniel's breath away. Hundreds of ships hung in the void, linked by docking tubes and communication lasers. Makeshift habitats floated between them. Children played in zero-gravity modules. Farmers grew algae in recycled water tanks. It wasn't an armada. It was a nation on the run. Among the refugees was Paul Reyes, a former city planner from Buenos Aires. He had lost his wife in the riots but saved his 2 daughters. Now he helped organize food distribution and waste recycling across the fleet. He found Daniel on the command deck of the lead ship, the Aurora Dawn. We can't keep drifting, Paul said. People need hope, not just oxygen. What do you suggest? Daniel asked. A name, Paul replied. Not the exiles, not Earth's last fleet. Something that says we're still here. Still human. After a long talk with Lena and the other leaders, they chose Sol Conquered. It honored their son, their origin, and their promise to stay united. The name spread quickly. On ship walls and children's drawings and whispered prayers, it became a shield against despair. Then came the hard part, crossing into the veil. The nebula's edge loomed like a wall of fire. Sensors screamed warnings. Radiation levels spiked. Gravity wells twisted space in ways that broke standard navigation. But they had no choice. Behind them, Council patrols watched, ready to fire on any ship that turned back. Daniel gave the order. One by one, the ships of the Sol Concord activated their jump drives and vanished into the storm. Inside the veil, time lost meaning. Days blurred into weeks. Some ships vanished without a trace, swallowed by magnetic vortices or torn apart by unseen forces. Others limped along with failing engines patched together by engineers working in darkness. Food ran low. Morale dipped. But still, they pressed on. Then, on the 43rd day, Lena spotted something strange on long-range scans. A structure. Not natural. Not council-made. It hung in the void like a broken crown kilometers wide, covered in strange glyphs that pulsed with faint blue light. Daniel ordered a cautious approach. As the Aurora Dawn drew closer, the structure responded. Panels shifted. Lights brightened. A docking bay opened as if expecting them. Lena's voice trembled with excitement. This isn't just a ruin, it's... Waiting, they sent a small team inside. What they found changed everything. Vast chambers filled with machines that still hummed with power. Libraries of data stored in crystal lattices. And at the heart of it all, a core that pulsed like a living heart. Later they would learn these were the Echo Arcs, left behind by a race so ancient, even the Council spoke of them only in myths. But on that day, all they knew was this: they were not alone in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, they had been led here for a reason. As the first human stepped onto the Ark's inner deck, Daniel stood on the bridge and looked out at the swirling colors of the nebula. For the first time since the verdict, he felt something other than dread. He felt possibility. The Council had banished them to die. But in the heart of the storm, humanity had found a second chance. And they would not waste it. Part 2. The Echo Arc did not speak in words, but in light and motion. Its corridors shifted when humans walked through them, as if the structure knew where they needed to go. Panels glowed softly under Lena's touch, showing symbols that made no sense at first but slowly began to form patterns. She spent days inside the Ark, barely sleeping, her eyes red from staring at strange interfaces. Daniel brought her food, but she barely noticed. She was chasing something bigger than hunger. Outside, the rest of the fleet clung to the Ark like barnacles on an old ship. Engineers in patched suits crawled over its outer hull, connecting cables from human vessels to ports that opened on their own. Power flowed back into the fleet, clean, steady, and stronger than anything Earth had ever produced. Life support systems hummed to full strength. Lights that had flickered for weeks now burned bright. Paul Reyes organized work crews to move supplies into the Ark's vast interior bays. Families followed, carrying blankets, tools, and children wrapped in thin coats. The Ark was cold at first, but warmed as more humans entered. It was as if the place responded to their presence. Walls lit up when someone walked by. Doors slid open before hands reached them. Water flowed from taps that had been dry for centuries. No one knew who built the Ark. No carvings showed faces. No records spoke of war or peace. But one thing was clear: whoever made it had planned for others to find it. And they had left behind gifts. Lena finally understood part of the main control system. She called it the core nexus. It was a sphere of liquid metal floating in a chamber reacting to thought and voice. When she whispered a question in basic math, it answered with a pulse of light. When Daniel asked how to repair a broken engine, the walls displayed schematics and human symbols. Within a month, human engineers were building new machines based on Ark designs. They fused old Earth tech with the Ark's knowledge. A small workshop on Deck 7 created a device that turned radiation into fuel. Another team built a shield generator that bent light around a ship, making it nearly invisible. The fleet began to change. Old freighters were refitted with sleek new hulls. Colony ships grew extra decks. The Aurora Dawn became the first true warship of the Sol Concord, its weapons powered by Ark energy cores. It no longer looked like a refugee vessel. It looked like the beginning of something strong. Years passed. Children born in the Veil Nebula knew no other home. They played in zero-gravity gardens grown inside the Ark. They learned math from glowing walls and history from elders who still remembered Earth's blue skies. Schools formed in wide chambers. Farms sprouted in hydroponic rings. A new society grew, not from ruins but from wonder. Daniel no longer wore his old uniform. He dressed in simple gray fabric like everyone else. But people still looked to him for answers. He walked the decks daily, listening to concerns, solving problems, and reminding people why they were here. "We were cast out," he often said, "but we are not lost. We are building." Lena became the head of the Science Guild. She trained young minds to read the Ark's language. Some of her students were barely teenagers, but they could fix a plasma conduit or decode an alien data stream better than any Earth engineer. One girl, named Mia, figured out how to link multiple arcs together using a signal hidden in starlight. That discovery led them to 2 more echo arcs drifting deeper in the nebula. Each new arc brought more knowledge. One held star maps of the entire galaxy, places even the Council had never reached. Another contained seeds for plants that grew in toxic soil. A third had machines that could heal broken bones in hours. Paul Reyes, now called governor by most, worked with Daniel and Lena to shape laws for their growing society. They agreed on simple rules: no hoarding, no violence, and everyone must contribute. In return, everyone got food, shelter, and a voice. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. People trusted each other because they had to. There was no one else out here. The fleet grew too large to stay in one place. They split into groups, each anchored to an arc. Messenger ships flew between them, carrying news, supplies, and families visiting relatives. A network of light and radio held them together. They called it the Veil Web. Then came the day they tested their first true jump drive based on Arctech. It didn't just bend space, it folded it. A ship could vanish from one point and appear light years away in seconds with no strain on the hull. Kyle Dawson, a young pilot with sharp eyes and steady hands, volunteered to test it. He took a small scout ship named Starling and jumped to a dead system 300 light years away. He returned in under an hour, grinning like a boy who'd just won a race. That changed everything. Now they could explore safely. They found worlds with clean water, rich soil, and no life to disturb. They built outposts on moons and asteroids. Factories rose from raw metal pulled from comets. Ships rolled off assembly lines that built themselves. The soul conquered was no longer just surviving. It was expanding. But with growth came new questions. What if the Council found them? What if someone else lived out here? And most of all, what were they becoming? Lena worried about that last one. She saw how easily the new tech could be used for war. She saw how some young men talked about paying back the Council. She spoke to Daniel often about balance. "We must not become what they feared us to be," she said one night, standing with him on an observation deck overlooking a newborn city built inside a hollowed asteroid. Daniel nodded. "We build to live, not to conquer. But we also won't be weak again." News came from the edge of their territory. Scouts reported strange energy readings near the nebula's outer rim. Not Council ships, something older. Something watching. Lena checked the Ark records. Buried deep in the data, she found a warning. The Echo Arcs were not just gifts. They were a test. The builders had vanished because they failed it. The test was simple. Would the finders use this power to lift others up or to crush them? No one spoke of it openly, but the message spread. In schools, in meetings, in quiet talks before sleep, people asked themselves, what kind of empire are we making? For now, the answer was clear. They built hospitals before weapons. They shared knowledge before secrets. They honored the past but did not live in it. The Veil Nebula was no longer a prison. It was a cradle. And from it, humanity was rising, not as exiles, but as something new. Something ready. The stars outside the nebula waited, and soon the Sol Concord would be ready to meet them. Part 3 time moved differently in the Veil Nebula. Years passed like seasons, marked not by calendars but by growth. The scattered outposts of the Sol Concord had become cities. The cities had become worlds. And the worlds now looked outward, beyond the swirling clouds of gas that had once been their prison. At the heart of it all was Ethel, a planet found deep in the nebula's calmest sector. It had twin suns that rose and set in golden harmony, oceans rich with strange but harmless life, and continents wide enough to hold millions. Humans had landed there quietly at first, testing the soil, the air, the water. When they found it safe, they built. Not just shelters, but homes. Not just farms, but forests replanted with earth trees grown from frozen seeds. Ethel became the capital of the new human civilization, and its people called it the Cradle. On Ethel's central plateau stood the Hall of Voices, a low building made of polished stone and art glass that shimmered in the sunlight. Inside, Chancellor Maya Ruiz listened as reports came in from the edges of human space. She was not old, but her eyes carried the weight of responsibility. She had been a teacher before the exile, then a community leader during the early years in the Ark. Now she guided a society that numbered in the hundreds of millions. Beside her stood Commander Kyle Dawson. He was younger than most leaders, but his record spoke for itself. He had mapped more of the Veil than anyone alive. His ship, the Starling, was now a symbol, painted on school walls, mentioned in songs. He did not wear medals. He wore a simple black uniform with a silver sun on the collar, the mark of the Iron Sun Fleet. "The outer patrols report clear skies," Kyle said, pointing to a star map hovering above the table. "No council signals. No unknown ships. But we found something else." Maya leaned forward. "What? A signal?" "Buried in cosmic noise. It repeats every 17 hours. Not natural. Not ours." Lena Brooks, now older but still sharp, entered the room. Her hair was gray, but her step was quick. "I've analyzed it," she said. "It's a beacon, very old, and it's coming from outside the Veil." Silence filled the room. Outside the Veil meant council space, or worse, something beyond even them. "We can't ignore it," Kyle said. "If it's a trap, we need to know. If it's a chance, we can't waste it." Maya looked at the faces around her. These were not the desperate refugees of old. They were builders, thinkers, protectors. They had turned exile into strength. But strength meant nothing if it was never tested. "Send a scout," she said. "One ship, quiet, no weapons unless needed." Kyle nodded. "I'll go myself." 2 weeks later, the Starling slipped through the last veil of gas and dust, emerging into open space for the first time in decades. The stars here were brighter, sharper. Familiar constellations from Earth's sky appeared like old friends. Kyle felt a strange ache in his chest. He had never seen Earth, but he knew its stories. Now he was closer to it than any human had been in a lifetime. He followed the signal to a dead moon, orbiting a cold red star. There, half buried in rock, was a device. Small, black, covered in the same glyphs as the Echo Arcs. It pulsed with soft light as the Starling approached. Kyle sent a drone. The moment it touched the device, the glyphs flared. A message played, not in sound but in images projected into the ship's computer. It showed a star system being consumed by darkness. A fleet of unknown ships, sleek and silent, burning worlds. Then a warning: "They come, prepare." The drone lost power. The device shut down. Kyle returned to Ethel in record time. He brought the recording. Lena studied it for days. She compared the unknown ships to every record in the Ark database. Nothing matched. But one thing was clear: this enemy was not the Council. It was something older, something worse. Maya called an emergency assembly. All colony leaders, fleet captains, and science heads gathered in the Hall of Voices. Kyle showed them the message. Fear flickered in some eyes, but most felt something else: resolve. "We spent years building," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "Not just ships and cities, but a way of life. We will not let fear tear it down, but we will not be caught unready." Orders went out across human space. Shipyards doubled their output. New fighters rolled off lines powered by Ark cores and guided by human minds. Shield technology improved. Weapons were tested not for conquest but for defense. Every able person trained in basic combat or emergency response. Not because they wanted war, but because they refused to be helpless again. Kyle led new patrols, this time armed and alert. He pushed deeper into the Veil's uncharted zones, searching for more beacons, more warnings. He found 2 more. Each told the same story. A silent enemy moving through the galaxy, erasing civilizations without a word. Back on Ethel, children still went to school. Farmers still harvested crops. Artists still painted murals of stars and ships. But now every city had hidden bunkers. Every ship had a battle protocol. The peace remained, but it was guarded. Then came the day the Council's edge brushed against theirs. A small Council scout, damaged and drifting, crossed into human-claimed space near the nebula's rim. It wasn't an attack. Its engines were dead. Its crew was dying. Kyle found it. He could have left it. Many urged him to. "They banished us," one officer said. "Let them rot." But Kyle remembered the warning from the Echo Arcs. Power used to crush is power wasted. He brought the scout aboard. Its crew, 3 insect-like beings from the Veln species, were weak but alive. He gave them food, medicine, and a message. "Tell your council. We are not your enemy, but we are not your subjects either." The Veln returned home. What they reported changed everything. Rumors spread through council space. The exiles were not dead. They were strong. They had saved council lives, and they had ships that moved like ghosts. Some council members called for war. Others whispered that perhaps the old judgment had been wrong. But all of them now knew one truth. Humanity was no longer hiding. On Ethel, Maya stood with Kyle and Lena on a high balcony, watching the sunset of the twin suns. Below, the city glowed with light. Ships rose and landed in quiet rhythm. Children laughed in the streets. "We're ready," Kyle said. Maya nodded. Not for war, but for whatever comes next. And in the silence that followed, they all felt it. The quiet hum of an empire not built on pride, but on purpose. The iron sun had risen, and it would not set again. Farthur. The council had always believed the Veil Nebula was empty. A graveyard of dust and radiation, useful only as a dumping ground for problems they wished to forget. For decades, they heard nothing from beyond its edge. No signals, no ships, no signs of life. They assumed humanity had faded into silence, as all banished species did. Then came the Veln report. 3 survivors returned to Horus Prime aboard a human vessel. Clean, quiet, and impossibly advanced. Their ship had no visible engines, yet it moved faster than any council cruiser. Its hull shimmered like water under starlight, and its crew had offered help without asking for anything in return. High Arbiter Vexilorn did not believe it at first. He ordered scans, tests, memory probes, but the Veln told the same story again and again. The humans were not broken. They were thriving, and they were watching. Panic spread through the council chambers. Species that had voted for exile now whispered in corners. The Cathari, who had once called humans reckless children, now feared what those children had become. The Zoran, ancient and proud, demanded immediate action. "If they grow stronger, they will come for us," their envoy said. Vexilorn, ever cautious, sent drones, small stealthy probes designed to slip past any sensor. They crossed the nebula's border and vanished. None returned. A second wave met the same fate. On the third attempt, one drone sent back a single image before going dark. A human ship, larger than a council dreadnought, floating beside a structure of impossible geometry. Then static, that was enough. The council convened its full war council, a gathering not held in over 200 years. Fleets were mobilized, shield worlds powered up their defenses. Spies were sent to fringe systems to listen for rumors, and for the first time since the exile, the council looked toward the Veil not with contempt but with fear. They did not know about the silent enemy from the beacon. They did not know humanity was preparing for a threat far worse than them. All they saw was power they could not explain, rising in the dark. Meanwhile, on Ethel, Maya Ruiz received word of the council's movements. Scout ships reported fleet buildups near the nebula's edge. Patrol patterns had changed. Warships that once lingered near trade lanes now pointed their bows toward human space. "They think we're coming for them," Kyle said, standing in the strategy room beneath the Hall of Voices. "Maybe we should," said a young officer named Eli, his voice tight with anger. "After what they did, let them feel what exile feels like." Maya shook her head. "No, that is not who we are. We built this not to take, but to stand." Lena entered holding a data slate. Her face was grim. "The beacons are active again, stronger this time. The signal shows the Dark Fleet is moving faster. They've consumed 3 more systems. One of them was on the Council's outer rim." A cold silence fell. The Council's outer rim. That meant the enemy was close, closer than anyone thought. Kyle looked at the star map. If they hit Council space, the chaos will spread. Billions could die. And if the Council falls, we're next. Maya made her decision. "We warn them." "No," Eli said. "They'll think it's a trick." "Maybe," Maya replied. "But if we stay silent and they fall, we lose more than allies. We lose the chance to prove we're better than they believed." She ordered a message sent, not through normal channels, but through a narrow band pulse aimed directly at Horus Prime. It contained the beacon recordings, the arc warnings, and a simple offer. "Meet us at Syra 7. We bring truth, not weapons." The Council did not reply. But 3 days later, their fleet stopped moving toward the Veil. Instead, it turned inward, reinforcing their own borders. They had seen the message, and for the first time, they were afraid of something other than humanity. Still, they did not trust. Vexilorn sent a single envoy ship to Syrah 7, a neutral mining world on the border between Council and human space. It arrived armed, shields up, engines ready to flee. Kyle went alone to meet them aboard the Starling, no escort, no weapons charged. He landed on the dusty surface of Syrah 7 and waited. The envoy was a being named Trell, from the Mira species, tall, with pale blue skin and eyes that never blinked. He stepped out of his shuttle with 2 guards. He did not smile. He did not speak at first. Kyle held up a small device. This plays the full beacon log. It shows what's coming. It's not us. It's something that kills everything in its path. Trell took the device. He watched the recording. His hands trembled slightly. "Why tell us?" he finally asked. "Because if you fall, we fall," Kyle said. "And because we remember what it's like to be left alone in the dark." Trell returned to Horus Prime. This time his report changed everything. The council debated for days. Some still called it a human trick, but others pointed to strange energy spikes on their own borders, signs that matched the beacon's description. The Zoran elders grew quiet. The Cathari stopped calling for war. Then, the unthinkable happened. A council patrol near the Zenthar system vanished, not destroyed, erased. No debris, no signals, just empty space where a ship had been. Scans showed a cold spot in spacetime like a wound in reality. That was the proof they needed. Vexilorn called Maya directly. Not through messages. Not through envoys. A live channel, voice only. "You spoke the truth," he said, his tone heavy. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Maya replied. "Only a chance to stand together." The council did not say yes, but they did not say no. Back on Ethel, people waited. Factories kept building. Farms kept growing. Children kept learning. But now every ship carried extra shielding. Every city had emergency protocols for unknown threats. Humanity was ready, for war, for peace, or for something in between. Kyle stood on the observation deck of the Aurora Dawn, now the flagship of the Iron Sun Fleet. Below, the launch bays glowed with activity. Ships moved like silver fish through the void. He thought of Earth, a world he had never seen. He thought of the exile, the Ark, the long years in the dark. And he knew one thing for certain. They were not the same humans who had been cast out. They were something more. The council still feared them, but fear could turn to respect. And respect could turn to alliance. Out in the deep, the silent enemy drew closer. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was not alone. Humanity was watching, and this time they would not be banished. They would be ready. Part 5. The council fleet arrived at Syrah 7 not as conquerors, but as guests. Their ships hung in orbit, shields down, weapons cold. Below, on the dusty surface of the old mining world, a single building stood ready. The old trade hall, cleaned and lit for the first time in decades. Inside, chairs were arranged in a circle, not rows. No high seats. No thrones. Just equals. Maya Ruiz walked in first, wearing simple gray robes with a silver sun stitched over her heart. Kyle Dawson followed, his uniform neat but unadorned. Lena Brooks came last, carrying a data case that held everything they had learned from the Echo Arcs, the star maps, the healing tech, the energy cores, and the warnings about the Dark Fleet. They did not bring soldiers. They brought truth. High Arbiter Vexilorn entered with 3 envoys, one from the Cathari, one from the Zoran, and Trell of the Mira. They looked older than before, their movements slower, their eyes tired. The weight of fear had worn them down. No one spoke at first. Then Maya stepped forward. "We are not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "We are here to offer help." She opened the data case. Images filled the air. Blueprints of arc-powered reactors that could power a city for 1,000 years. Medical devices that healed wounds in minutes. Seeds that grew food in poisoned soil. And then the final file. Full records of the Dark Fleet's path, its methods, its silence. "This enemy does not speak," Lena said. "It does not trade. It consumes. If it reaches your core worlds, none of your fleets will stop it. But together we might." Vexilorn studied the images. His silver skin dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought among his kind. "Why share this?" he asked. "You could have waited. Let us fall. Taken our place." "Because that is not strength," Kyle said. "Strength is choosing to lift others when you could crush them." The talks lasted 10 days. At first, suspicion ruled. The Cathari envoy questioned every number. The Zoran elder demanded proof of the Arctech. But slowly, trust grew. Human engineers demonstrated a small shield generator that bent light around a rock, making it vanish. A medical drone healed a burn on Trell's hand in under a minute. And when Maya offered to send human scientists to help reinforce Council borders, no one refused. On the 9th day, Vexilorn made an announcement. The Edict of Exile was revoked, not because the Council admitted fault, but because they saw a greater need. Humanity is no longer banished, he said. You are recognized as a sovereign power. Equal under the conquered, it was not an apology, but it was a beginning. The real test came 2 weeks later. A distress call echoed from the Zenthar system, the same place where the Council patrol had vanished. This time it was a mining colony under attack, not by ships but by something worse, a tear in space spreading like a crack in glass, swallowing everything near it. The Council fleet scrambled, but they were too far. Maya did not wait for permission. She ordered the Iron Sun fleet to jump. Kyle led the charge, the Aurora Dawn at the front, flanked by 20 new dreadnoughts built from Arc designs. They arrived to chaos. The tear pulsed in the void, pulling in asteroids, stations, even light. But around it, strange machines floated, black, spindly, silent. The Dark Fleet had arrived. Kyle did not fire. Instead, he deployed the new Arc resonators, devices Lena's team had built from the beacon data. They sent out a frequency that disrupted the tear's energy. Slowly, the crack began to close. The black machines turned toward the human ships. For the first time, they moved with purpose. Beams of cold light lanced out, but the Iron Sun shields held. Then the Council fleet arrived, late but ready. Together, human and alien ships formed a ring around the tear, pouring energy into the resonators. It took 6 hours. The tear sealed with a flash that lit up the system like a second sun. The black machines went still, then crumbled into dust. Silence returned. But it was a different kind of silence, not empty but shared. Back on Horus Prime, the Council held a new session. This time, a human seat stood empty in the Great Hall. Maya was invited to take it. She did not sit right away. She stood before them all and said only this: "We do not seek to rule. We seek to stand beside you, as partners." As equals, the vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. In the months that followed, joint stations rose on the borders of known space. Human engineers worked with Zoran architects. Cathari pilots trained alongside Iron Sun crews. And on Ethel, the first alien children enrolled in human schools wide-eyed at the glowing walls and floating gardens. Lena opened a new research center, shared by all species. Its first project was not a weapon, but a way to heal dying stars, something the Echo Arcs had hinted at but never finished. "Let us build life," she said, "not just survive it." Daniel Hayes, now old and gray, watched from a hill on Ethel as a Council science vessel landed gently in the valley below. He smiled. He remembered the day they were cast out, the shame, the fear. Now his people walked among the stars not as beggars but as builders. Kyle took command of the new Joint Defense Fleet, a force of human and alien ships tasked with watching the deep dark. He knew the enemy would return, but now they would not face it alone, and Maya? She returned to the Hall of Voices, not as a ruler but as a bridge. She spoke often of the lesson from the Echo Arcs. Power is not measured in weapons, but in what you choose to protect. The galaxy changed that day. Not with a bang, not with war, but with a choice. The species once deemed too wild to belong had not only survived their punishment, they had shown the galaxy a better way. And as the twin suns of Ethel set over a city full of hope, humanity stood not at the edge of the stars, but at the heart of them.